All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something, well, pretty personal and kind of sensitive, to be honest. We're going to be looking at those signs that might make someone question, if they're really the biological father of a child.
Yeah, you're right. This stuff hits at the core of family and identity. It can get pretty heavy pretty fast.
No doubt about it. And we want to be upfront right from the start. We're not here to give any definitive answers, right? Only a proper DNA test can do that. What we're going to do is break down these 9 signs that we've got from our sources, try to shed some light on them.
We're basically exploring this whole landscape together.
Exactly. Think of it as like a guided tour, but through some, well, maybe uncharted territory for some folks. So let's get started with the first one, shall we? This is all about the timeline of the birth and when things, well, they might not quite add up.
Right, so this first sign, it really boils down to those basic facts of conception. The estimated time frame when the baby was born, and crucially, whether the guy was even around the mother during that key period. If things don't match up, it's natural for questions to pop up.
Yeah, it's like if you weren't there when it was possible, well, that's going to make you think, right?
For sure.
But even though a timeline mismatch can make someone do a double take, the sources we've got are pretty clear. It's not enough to jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Memories can be fuzzy, and things aren't always as straightforward as they appear. That's why DNA testing comes into the picture, because sometimes you just need that hard evidence to get to the bottom of things.
Now, the second sign, this one can really throw a wrench into things. It's about getting new info, like a rumor from a relative or a friend dropping a bombshell that changes the whole story of the child's birth.
Oh, absolutely. This often involves those whispers, those secrets that suddenly make you question everything you thought you knew. And those revelations, even if they feel undeniably true, our sources caution against relying on them as the sole basis for any conclusions.
I mean, imagine, right? It's like your own family history gets flipped on its head. Of course you'd want answers. But stories change. People have their own agendas.
Exactly. That's why our sources really emphasize the need for more than just someone's word, no matter how convincing they sound. It's about getting those solid facts, not just hearsay.
Right. So moving on to the third sign, and this one's more internal, it's that feeling of not having a connection with your kid, maybe especially noticeable if you've got other children, and the bond feels different. That whole idea of a fatherly instinct comes into play here.
Yeah, this gets into some pretty deep stuff, and it's complex. The sources point out that a man might feel this difference, this lack of an emotional bond, and it can make him question that biological link.
Yeah, it's like a gut feeling, right? Something feels off.
Yeah.
But our sources are really clear. This feeling on its own, it doesn't confirm anything. There are so many reasons why a parent-child relationship might develop differently, and biology isn't the only factor at play.
Not at all. You got personalities clashing, maybe different life circumstances, even things we're not consciously aware of. All these can shape how we connect with each other.
And speaking of connections, sign number 4 brings us to something that everyone notices: looks. This is about the child not resembling the supposed dad, maybe even looking more like someone else.
This is just natural human observation. We look for family resemblances. Now, our sources acknowledge that looks are tied to DNA, of course, but they also
Yeah.
emphasize that not every child's going to be a mini-me of their dad. Genetics are wild, right?
Totally. I mean, think about siblings who look completely different. So a child not looking exactly like their parent, that's not so strange.
Right, but when you start comparing the child to someone else, someone who could be the biological father, then those questions might start creeping in.
Okay, so on to sign number 5. And this one goes deeper into those specific traits that might not line up with the family's known genetics. We're talking about eye color, hair color, those sorts of things that seem, well, genetically improbable.
Exactly. This is about those characteristics that usually follow a predictable pattern of inheritance, like in the example we got from our sources, a child with blue eyes, when both the dad and his mom have brown eyes. Brown eyes are typically dominant, so this kind of scenario really suggests a blue-eyed biological father somewhere in the picture.
Right. We all remember that whole dominant and recessive genes thing from school, right?
Hmm.
So one instance of this, well, maybe a recessive gene popped up, no big deal. But if multiple traits are off, that's when it becomes more significant.
Yeah, it's about that pattern, those multiple characteristics that don't match up with what you'd expect from the presumed father's side.
Okay, sign number 6 gets into even more scientific territory. This is about the child having a blood type that's impossible based on the parents' blood types.
This one's classic genetics 101. Blood type inheritance, it's a perfect example of how traits get passed down. The sources lay it out pretty clearly. With the ABO blood group system, certain combinations just can't produce specific blood types in kids.
Yeah, the example they gave was super clear. If both parents have the same dominant type, let's say A or B, but their child has a different dominant type, well, that throws a wrench in things. In some cases, it's just biologically impossible.
Right, like if both parents are type O, which is recessive, their kids can only be type O.
Oh,
A child with AB or AB in that situation, that raises a major red flag.
for sure. Now, sign number 7 takes us back to a more subjective area, personality. This is about the child having a personality that seems totally different from both parents, which kind of taps into that whole nature versus nurture debate.
You hit the nail on the head. While genetics definitely play a role in shaping our personalities, so does everything else. Environment, how you were raised, all those life experiences. The sources acknowledge this and make a crucial point. A lack of personality similarity. It's not a solid reason to doubt a biological connection on its own, but it can fuel those existing doubts, right?
It's like if you and your kid clash constantly, see the world in completely different ways, it's understandable that those thoughts might creep in.
Totally. But you can't just pin personality differences on biology. There's so much more going on.
Okay, sign number 8. This one's interesting. Talking to your own parents about your child's behavior. It's like getting an outside perspective from people who know you really well and might spot those echoes of your own childhood in your kid.
Right. This is about tapping into those long-term observations, right? They've known you since you were a kid and might recognize things in your child that you don't even see.
Like, they might say, oh, little Timmy has that same stubborn streak you had at his age, and maybe that gives you some reassurance.
Yeah. But even with this, the sources point out there's no guarantee it'll give a definitive answer. Memories can be unreliable, and those similarities might exist for reasons beyond genetics.
And finally, we get to sign number 9, the one that cuts through all the speculation. A DNA paternity test. This is the gold standard, right? This is what gives you a definitive answer.
Absolutely. DNA testing compares genetic profiles, and it's incredibly accurate.
And the sources emphasize this. If that test says you're the father, even if some of these other signs are still there, that test result is the only answer that matters.
That's it. End of story.
So there you have it, 9 potential indicators, 9 things that might lead someone to question biological fatherhood. But remember, we can't stress this enough, these are just signs, not proof. Only a DNA test can provide that.
And given how sensitive and emotional this all is, it's crucial to approach these situations with care, empathy, and a focus on facts. Always got to consider everyone involved, especially the child.
Couldn't agree more. It's a mix of genetics, environment, and those gut feelings that can be so hard to decipher. So as we wrap up, we'll leave you with this. What does it really mean to be a father in today's world? It goes way beyond just biology. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.
Take care.